The advocate's claim was that gene therapy is beneficial to many people suffering from medical illnesses and diseases. While this is obviously true that gene therapy has been helpful in some cases, it is also true that it has had some very concerning results in many cases, and it's only been in clinical trials and has never been released to the public for serious medical uses. The advocates' claims were that gene therapy can treat diseases in the long run. Their second claim was that gene therapy allows for indirect donors and that gene therapy allows people a chance to live a more normal life. In response to their second claim, gene therapy, the first clinical trials began in 1990, and while they have been continuing trials throughout to now till 2013, no one has actually taken the science out of clinical trials. And while there have been successful trials, some have shown no results, and even some have shown serious problems for patients. And in response to their second claim that gene therapy allows for indirect donors, while it is useful and this is possible, its usefulness is in question. There's been a need for insulin for diabetic patients for years, and they have been given insulin from many other sources other than through specifically gene therapy. Another use suggested that allows for indirect donors is that organs from people that are not direct matches could have gene therapy applied to them to make them more suitable candidates for organ transplant. However, this has never been done seriously in clinical trials to allow them to have replacement organs from patients that were not direct matches. Another issue is that in many clinical trials, patients who were treated for acute immune diseases, also during the process, mutations occurred in the virus that resulted in leukemia in patients with ages as young as 10. These were the ideal patients as they were young, and this was linked to their DNA that they could be treated for this, but they developed a more serious condition, leukemia. Another problem with gene therapy is that it is extremely expensive. During trials, costs for patients were upwards of $100,000, and a firm in the UK ran numbers to see how expensive it would be to run it into production, and costs ran upwards of $1 million, making it extremely unfeasible for any person seeking this for personal clinical treatment. And in summary, gene therapy is, although it is useful for certain patients, it is dangerous for many, and it is not very feasible for replacing organs or for diabetics.
All right, I like the label on the first claim, and you talk about some of the general restrictions on the claims that the advocate is making that they needed to make. In essence, the argument that these are not widespread, they aren't really getting out of the area of clinical trials. I think those are good arguments to make. I also think that you need some evidence to support them, because repeatedly you make reference to those points, and I didn't hear any source that talked about how limited these kinds of things are. The closest I got to a source citation was toward the end when you had this estimate of $100,000 per patient, and then a UK study estimated that it could be as high as $1 million. Now, I know that you found this information on the other point someplace, but you don't cite it in any of those places, and I think that is problematic. On the first point, you actually called it claim number 2, so that was a little bit confusing. I thought maybe you'd skipped over the first claim or kind of conceding that issue, but no, you come down to claim number 2 later on, so it's just probably a mislabel on that. You mentioned on that first issue, though, that there have been some problems for people who have undergone these kinds of treatments, but you don't tell us what those are. At the end, at the end of the second point, when you're talking about problems, you do specify what the problem is, the mutation of leukemia, and once again, a source citation on that would be helpful. The argument that there are other sources of insulin, I think you can take that as kind of general knowledge that people get insulin. I think your argument here needs to be a little bit clearer, and that is that there's not any reason why we need genetically created insulin when we have other sources of insulin, unless there's something unique or beneficial about it, and you don't tell us, why it matters one way or the other. I think that this is kind of one of those things that there's sort of a draw on this. I'm not sure what the affirmative or the advocate's advantage is, and I'm not sure why I would prefer what we have now. So I think you need to clarify that a little bit. Like I said, the cost issue I think was a good general response, and it was the one that came the closest to having most specific evidence citation. I thought you did a pretty good job summarizing your argument also. All right, thank you.